How many folks in the room are sourcers or have sourcing as part of their responsibility? Whoa, I got all the sourcers in the room. This is great. My name's Carmen Hudson, by the way, because I will forget to do this. I will always forget to introduce myself. So I am a consultant with an organization called Recruiting Toolbox, and we're a very small firm. We help companies do everything except recruit. We help them think about recruiting. We train the recruiters. We train hiring managers, that kind of stuff. So I get to talk with recruiters all over the country and lately in places outside of the US. And sourcing is a hot topic, and if I can judge by the number of people in the room, this is going to be very useful. So I would like to start by first just talking about a few rules of the road. We're going to start by introducing the panel. I have a few questions that we've already sort of pre-talked about a little bit over drinks and a couple of phone calls, and they're going to share a little bit about the interesting work that we do. This is a very, very, very diverse panel. Then I want to make sure that we open it up to you guys for questions. And this is a rare opportunity to interact with some very talented and distinguished folks in our industry. So we've got everyone on this panel from Brian, who is, we can call him a newbie. Can I call you a newbie?
Sure.
All right, we'll call you a newbie, but who has deep, deep experience in attracting talent in very unique ways for an organization that kind of gives him free rein to do what he needs to do. To Rebecca, who is from Australia. So she's from Atlassian, and she'll tell us a little bit more about her role and how they handle pipelining and why they do pipelining. And we'll get to hear some of her stories. And then we also have the great honor to have Glenn Guttmacher on our panel as well. Glenn I have known for years and years, and is probably one of the most talented sourcers in the world. So it's pretty cool to have him here. And last but not least, we have Peter Bugnato out of Lockheed, and he hires all the super secret spy, hacker people, building strange things that you see in the movies. And so he's got some great stories to tell about pipelining. So I want to start, first of all, wait, before my first question though, I have to do a shout out. So I think this is the first ever that this has ever happened at LinkedIn. But we have someone that we have to say hello to, and that's Brian's mom. She is in the audience. Shout out to Brian's mom. I think it's the first mom ever who asked to come to a recruiting conference. So just, that she's here, and we want to do her son proud, and we're very happy to have you, and we're very happy to have Brian on as part of the panel. So if I can ask each of you to talk a little bit more about your company, what you do, the kinds of folks you pipeline, and maybe a little bit about your approach, and then we'll go deeper into that as we go on. Questions, thoughts? Hold my horses. You want to do something different? All right, we're good. Oh, I have slides too. I'm good at this. Here we go, that's me. That's one haircut ago, which this is about a week old, by the way. I was rocking a fro all summer. So Brian, let's start with you, since you're the first slide there.
So my name is Brian Murray. I'm the director of talent and culture at a social media marketing agency based in New York City, about 45 full-time employees. Ultimately, my role is both recruiter, so getting great people to come to us, and then on the other end, it's retention. So I'm a full-service generalist HR person, but a lot of my role has been in the past 3 years in recruiting. So Likeable, as it says, is a social media marketing agency, works with Fortune 500 brands, doing great work with a focus in content development, developing things and putting things out there on behalf of brands that are going to help drive their business goals. I was featured last November and December in Mashable and Business Insider because I'm likely the only person who has used Snapchat as a way to engage and drive applications. I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's pretty simple. They apply to Likeable. They get the spit back an email that says, hey, you should, if you want to follow up, do all these things. And one of them is you can Snapchat Brian.
Anybody in the room use Snapchat for recruiting? Got a couple folks who've actually tried.
So
That's awesome.
it doesn't really make sense for all roles, but considering that we are looking for people who are into social, that understand Twitter, that understand all the different platforms there are for communication, it's been a great way to get people to rise to the top. And then, in truth, I'm working with a really small budget. I mean, all of my sourcing, all of my people have come to us through social. It's through LinkedIn, it's through finding me, it's through finding other employees. It's the biggest part of what we do. I mean, I ultimately have a recruiting budget of about $15,000 a year, which about half of it is wiped out by LinkedIn.
Shout out.
Which, I mean, is great, but and very, very important, but everything else I do is pure just finding people and talking to them.
Awesome, thank you. We'll dive a little bit deeper into some of those social tactics. So let's go to Glenn, since that's the way the slides go, and I follow the slides.
Unless you want to switch seats, Rebecca. I don't know. So Avanade does high-end IT solutions exclusively on the Microsoft platform. We were founded by Microsoft and Accenture, who still own our company. And we've got about 20,000 employees. Half of them are in Asia, who are technically Accenture employees, but they're dedicated to our projects. So we're always looking for those technical developer solution types that have that nice blend of consulting soft skills and hard technical skills.
Awesome, great. And as I understand it, you have built a team that essentially works as a sourcing RPO team that you work with exclusively in China and another team in India.
Yeah, so we have what we like to call an internal RPO model.
Wow.
So we've trained a whole bunch of sourcers offshore. They're all in China, actually, currently, on onshore, doing online sourcing methods. And then those leads come to a junior calling team on our onshore team to do the initial phone screening.
That's awesome. So the variety here, we have a one-man show, and then we have someone with global teams to do this work. So we're all doing it in a different way. This is why this panel is so fascinating. Very cool. Thank you. We'll dive more into that. A little bit more about Glenn. We'll go back to that slide. Pete.
Hi, I'm Pete Buñato, and I work at Lockheed Martin. We're a small startup company. Some of you might have heard us. We're actually the largest defense and aerospace company in the United States and globally, and we have about 116,000 employees. And since 2007, I've solely been dedicated to passive pipeline building specifically for cybersecurity professionals with all types of clearances and certifications. So it's really unique. It's a small group called Strategic Sourcing that's about 5 people inside of the bigger talent acquisition group. There's about roughly 127 total recruiters at Lockheed Martin, give or take. So the big challenge I have is I'm trying to find the people that really, if they're good at what they do, they don't really have a web presence, or what they put on LinkedIn is probably not what they're really doing. So it's, but don't get me wrong, I use LinkedIn a lot. So it's, it's
cool.
a challenge, it's a lot of fun.
Any scandal watchers in the room? Yeah, so he hires B613, right? It's awesome. Thank you. A little bit more.
I neither confirm nor deny that. So.
Awesome. We can not confirm or deny. And Rebecca, last but not least, certainly.
So hi everyone, I'm Rebecca. I'm from Sydney, Australia, so I should say g'day y'all. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm from a company called Atlassian. Has anyone heard of Atlassian before? Used products? Cool. Yeah, represent.
Got some clients in the room. Yeah.
So we're headquartered in Sydney. We have around 1,000 employees globally, including here in San Francisco. The massive challenge we face in terms of recruitment is that we have a huge growth. So we're experiencing about 40% year-on-year growth, and you can imagine what that means for recruitment and for talent growth. So I have a few stories to share with you today, but super excited to be here with the other guys too.
That's awesome. So let's stick with you, Rebecca. You guys were able to share with me some pipelining projects, A to Z, that you led, that actually led to success and successful hires. So I'd like to understand what that means for you and sort of what the project was and how long it took and what were some of the dirty details.
So my role at Atlassian is twofold. Basically, I look after grad recruitment globally, and I also look after global campaigns. What that means is I support the experienced hire team in large-scale or volume recruitment campaigns, which are sort of similar to guerrilla marketing. The two, I guess, successful stories we've had in terms of pipelining, one would be a graduate experience. This year, I was tasked with growing the grad program from an intake of 18 to 40. And in the developer space. So the war for technical talent in Sydney is probably, as I imagine over here, it's incredibly hard to find good talent, especially in the grad space. So I thought we need to expand our search globally, and I had a really good feel about New Zealand as an emerging talent market. So I devised a campaign where we went to New Zealand, we visited 5 universities over 9 days, and I came home with 10 grad hires. That was 9 months ago. I've lost none in the process. So that was a super successful campaign. The other thing Atlassian is renowned for is kind of big bang out there guerrilla recruitment campaigns. I have been involved in a couple, and a story that I can tell, which is not actually my campaign but was super successful, is that we went to Europe in 2012 and we launched a campaign called Europe, We're Coming to Steal Your Geeks. And essentially it was a campaign where we aimed to hire 15 developers in 15 days across 3 or 4 European cities. Atlassian drove a bus through every city. We had developers doing interviews on site, and we actually made more than the 15 hires, and we relocated 17 people to the Sydney office. The success in that campaign was absolutely due to virality. It went crazy in terms of the campaign concept and spread throughout Europe. We were simultaneously lucky with the timing, given that the European job market wasn't great at that point in time. But the campaign was a fantastic success. We had over 1,000 applications in 4 weeks. So from a pipelining perspective, you know, it was incredibly successful.
Awesome. Did you do anything with, so you were able to hire over the 15 that you needed, but then you had these other, 985 folks who were interested in your company. Do you do anything to keep them engaged with Atlassian?
Yeah, and to this day, 2 days later, we still receive applications as a result of that campaign. So, the success of that has kept on going, and a lot of those candidates who weren't successful at the time have since come through the process and been successful. So, yeah, definitely the keep warm and using those people to keep pipelining into future roles has been a big part.
Awesome, great. Brian, could you tell us about some of your successful approaches to candidates?
So there's a couple things. I approach my job very much like a marketer. I'm working in a unique space where I want to end up being on Mashable and getting Likeable recognized for having a great culture and these kinds of things. So the first one I mentioned a little bit was the Snapchat idea, which has worked really well in number one, driving candidates, because people that were reading the quote-unquote industry rags were now going, what's Likeable Media? Who are they hiring? And driving people to ultimately the name recognition of our brand. The other one has been, we're looking for people that want to work at cool places that are doing fun, interesting things. So are you guys familiar with Crumbs? Like Crumbs Bakery? Mm-hmm.
The cupcakes place, right?
Cupcake place.
I know about that.
Yeah. So okay. So if you guys were paying attention to Crumbs in July of this year, there was they closed. Right. They all of a sudden one day shut down shop and it was all over the news. And I came to realize through talking to a couple of our employees that it was quite possible that we actually had what we were calling the last Crumbs cupcake. Somebody in our office had bought this cupcake. We had gone ahead and for whatever reason, they took pictures of it for content for one of our clients and put it in the back and nobody ate it. And I looked at them the next morning. I'm like, well, what can we do with this? We put it up on eBay. I had one of our copywriters kind of pitch in and write something that was interesting and catchy. We had somebody else kind of tweak a picture, and then we found people that were talking about the cupcakes, and myself and the rest of our team started tweeting at them, and we got on U.S. News and Time and
so Paris Hilton. You auctioned off a day-old cupcake?
Yeah, for actually, I think the most notable thing was we actually put an original price tag of $200 on it, because what's more conversational than a $200 cupcake that's a day old? The only thing actually worse is we still have the cupcake, and there were bids. Yeah, 2, which was amazing. So the final bid was $205. We actually have never collected it, so we still have the cupcake. But the amazing thing was, it was looking at who are we trying to get into our company. We're looking for people that are in tune with what's happening in pop culture, that are passionate about social, and I wanted to be there. And we got all of these places looking at us, like USA Today and stuff, and calling, and we pitched it as a culture story. It wasn't anything else beyond that. It was a bunch of people sitting around coming up with this idea. And the really neat part is there's a lot of people that are like, these people are idiots. That's fantastic. You just made my job easier. Because when I'm looking for people who want to buy into what we're doing and are going, wow, this is really cool. I found this article. Likeable Media sounds like a great place, and I want to work there. It's creating these stories where people still want to engage with you over time. And of course, you know, going back to the candidate process, of one of the things that I've really done is nurture a group that are following me and following Likeable and creating these stories that we have a lot of people that apply and we can't hire them at this time, right? For whatever reason, we don't have a spot, they're not the right fit, they don't have the right experience, but we want to touch base with them for a long time. We want them to find us and keep in touch, and these stories, you don't know how many people were like, you know what, I applied to Likeable 3 years ago, but I just saw the story, and they come back. So that was a really successful, I mean, it took no time at all.
That is amazing. I don't know, for how many people out there will with a tactic like this actually work, right? It works for you because it works for your company and what you do. It's incredibly creative, right? So there's a level of creativity around this, and it's getting people engaged around your company, no matter what that is. So let's hear about how you are engaging these B613ers.
So, is this on? Yeah. Okay. So I first tackle my main charter of pipelining as looking at it as it's not filling jobs. It really isn't. In fact, I like to tell the people I work with, because I face, my clients are the people I'm pipelining, as well as the business units, as well as those under 127 recruiters, because they're the ones who I need to build a trusted relationship with. They need to know what I'm doing. They need to buy into the whole pipeline exercise, because I like to say, once the rec's open, it's past me. It's now tactical. There's nothing strategic about it any longer. So I'm trying to get the need, the 6-month need, 1-year need, 2-year need out to keep that pipeline ready to go. And so the people I'm talking to, they're everywhere on the continuum. So sometimes, you know, even though you're going after the passive, you land on the active. So you get people that want a job tomorrow, people that don't want a job for a year, maybe they're rolling out of the military, so you know what their separation date is, whatever the case may be. So it's about branding, it's about relationship building, and it's about marketing and being in front of these people constantly, so that you're always in their head. Lockheed Martin is always in their head.
How do you do that? What are you doing? Do you email them? Do you tweet them? What do you do?
So I rely on something called the phone, and it's
yes.
I like to say old is the new. You'd be amazed at how many people don't use the phone anymore, and people are surprised when you call them. They're like, you're the first recruiter who's called me in like a year. So the phone is good, email, in-mail, however you're going to reach out to them.
What are you saying to them?
I'm trying to sell the mission, more or less, because we're never going to be the highest paying company out there. So I'm going after, like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? And where do you want to do it? Because I'm more in it for the long term, and that's what I communicate to them. It's just like, look, I'm not trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. I don't have any jobs assigned to me. I'm not working off a rec. I don't have a script. So I want to know what you want to do. What clearances do you have? How much experience? Do you like malware? Do you want to do digital forensics? Do you want to be a pen tester? What do you want to do? Where do you want to do it? Because much like real estate, what's the 3 most important things in real estate?
Location, location, location.
It's true with hiring too. It's more like location, timing, location. But that's, and then when they tell me that, I keep them on my radar, and I stay in touch with them.
How do you keep them on your radar? I'm a how person. I
Sure.
need to know how to do these things.
Sure. It's tough being a one-person show with that. So we're moving more towards a new CRM. We're actually rolling out right now, Smashfly. So I can do there you go, Smashfly fan. Yeah. So we can do more one-to-many forms of communications. The challenge with my particular pipeline is these folks really like that hands-on touch. So you've got a calendar. You got to figure out how you're going to calendar that. How you're going to maintain. When am I touching these people? Is it once a month, once a quarter, once a year? And then doing that. And we're very lucky. We have Marvin Smith on our team, who is
shout out to Marvin.
Shout out to Marvin. I don't know if he's in the room, but talent communities. When I hear talent communities, I think of Marvin Smith.
Those of you on Twitter, if you're following talent communities, it's just a nonstop flow of knowledge. It's awesome.
So we're going to start working together to get our first cybersecurity talent community off the ground, so we could then actually send them a lot more information, what we're doing in cybersecurity, industry-related stories, that type of thing.
Talk a little bit about your LinkedIn campaign for folks. You're sort of keeping track of folks who actually had taken new jobs.
Yeah, so we were talking about this the other night. So when I land on somebody who I'm like, oh, wow, this person's great, but wow, they just went to work for company X. So I'll send them an email and I'll just say, why wouldn't you want to work for Lockheed Martin? And I'll leave it really brief and I'll just put inside, by the way, congratulations, I saw you got a new job. And the response rate is amazing. They all respond, a lot of them, probably like 90%, and they'll say like, well, nothing against Lockheed Martin, I didn't know, no one called me, or I didn't know about that job. So it's been really good. It's a different approach, and I've also taken that approach with our highest attrition group, which is the 0 to 5 years. So I look at people who are doing, maybe they're a cyber intel analyst and they've been gainfully employed for 2 years out of college. So I'll target them thinking they're probably getting ready to make a job change, or they're probably starting to look, and send them out a little, tickler message about like, hey, I noticed you have this many years of experience. By the way, we're hiring for someone just like you in a location you want to be.
That's awesome. Great. Cool. So Glenn, explain to us your entire organization that you lead, how it works. We want all the inside skinny so that all these people can copy what you're doing and compete with you.
Well, I mean, there are fun, creative things that we all can do, and certainly like in diversity, I mean, if you're not putting in all the girl baby names from 30 years ago into one big LinkedIn search in the first name field, you're shooting yourself in the foot. I mean, that's easy. So you can also do things like, building on what he's talking about there. So if you're going to build a talent community, or have some kind of webinar with an internal subject matter expert who can really talk about what's interesting in that field at that time, so it doesn't seem like a recruiting event. They're actually learning something in the process, and you will get a lot of interest from that. But I really think the success around sourcing pipelining is just doing the steady stuff every day. And we know how it can work in your schedule. Things come up, things have to get delayed, and it's going to mess you up if your long-term goal is just continuing to build a pipeline. This is why we felt it was very important for us to have an offshore team where they are just dedicated to running lots of searches, sending emails, using, of course, very good templates, and all the other activities that you would do to try to build people against profiles. And that's the other thing. Don't get your sourcing team caught up with recs, because that's not going to work as well as having a consistent set of profiles that they know they can continue to funnel against.
How's your team structured? I'm curious, you as well, Rebecca.
So we have a global recruitment team, and there are around 20 recruiters globally. One thing that, as we've grown and scaled, that we definitely struggle with and need to improve on is how we pipeline as a team virtually and globally. I think as probably many people can share the same challenges, the team has grown so quickly, and the company has grown so quickly that we face a lot of challenges in terms of sharing information, pipelining as a team, and making sure that we share candidate information.
What do you use to do that? Do you have a platform,
we
meetings?
We have an ATS, which unfortunately doesn't do everything we want it to do, but we're in the midst of changing that and moving to a CRM as well. We have a lot of meet-up calls with each other, and through the campaigns that we run, like the large-scale volume campaigns, we really try and focus as a team on doing that globally. But again, it's something that we have acknowledged we need to improve, and we're looking to do over the next 12 months.
And what about you, Glenn? In terms of your organization and how you're structured, or?
I mean, besides the offshore team and the junior calling team, right. We have another about 30 North America recruiters and probably as many in other regions of the world. So they're the ones getting those leads teed up to them from the front end sourcing and then.
Got it. And so do you source them or pipeline them up into the point of qualifying them over the phone, or when do you do the handoff?
Yeah, it's after that first phone screen.
After that first phone screen.
And that's not to say that our veteran recruiters, who are also very good sourcers, aren't doing some of that also, but we're trying to supplement that with the historically proven, these are the categories we always need people in, so let's have a system that gets, 60 or 80% of those leads to them.
Got it. What about communications and support around, you talked about getting someone to help you tweak the photographs, or you talked about writing great templates. Who does that work?
Well, I do a lot of it.
Because that's important. We don't account for that, but as part of pipelining, that really is a key important.
Yeah.
It's not only that you communicate, but it's what you're going to share.
I don't think it doesn't even matter who initially gets, but you got to at least draft something and get it in front of the people who can validate that this is going to resonate with your target audience. So the best thing would actually be to share it with recent hires who are just like the people you're trying to target.
I set you up for that one.
I think you also need to, well, one thing we want to do more of is get our hiring managers involved in the pipelining efforts. I definitely think that talent knows talent, and hiring managers need to also be involved in the pipelining process for us, and I think they could bring so much into us, and of course we can continue the process from there, but that's definitely in the agenda for the next 12 months as well, is how can hiring managers assist us with the pipeline.
Brian, do you rely on your creative team?
Well, it's funny. Like she said, talking to hiring managers and having them understand that, listen, sometimes I'm really good at my job and I'll present 3 candidates and they're like, we like all 3. I'm like, oh, this is great. So in the future, we're going to hire 1. Let's keep these other 2 around. Like, how do we connect with them to, and how do you build a relationship with them to have them come back when we need them? Or be interested enough that in 3 months it can happen again. So it's, I do a lot of that. I mean, I hear talk of like CRMs and all these things, and I'm like, wow, that would be amazing if I had a team that was going to be able to do this. But for me, it's using what's available. It's like I look at touch points and contact with all of these people. I use LinkedIn. I'm liking things. I see a job change and I reach out. The Connected app is the best thing in the world, if you guys haven't seen it, from LinkedIn, where it just sources a couple people for you to reach out and touch base with that maybe you were connected with for whatever reason. That's been so valuable for me, to just those touch points over time, so that when, again, I reach out, they're gonna respond. The other thing that I've learned is using social is such a great thing, not only just following them. At first I thought, okay, if I find somebody who's great, that's in advertising, that's in marketing, I can follow them on Twitter, and then I'll just know them. The best compliment I've been able to pay people is just a simple favorite or a tweet or a direct message and say, hey, like, I love that article you shared, it was great, it definitely spoke to me. And just connecting with them so that, again, when it comes down to reaching out and having the need, that they're ready to go.
That's awesome. I have some more questions here. I definitely want to hear about speed and scale, but I want to stop and find out if you have questions in the audience. We've got 2 mics set up, or if you shout, I'll try to repeat your question. Anybody have some thoughts, questions they want to share? Right here in the front.
I'm curious about how you track the data when you're pipelining. You mentioned CRM and RATS. We're in the healthcare organization. It's not going to work for us, so we've been doing it in Excel primarily. What are you all doing?
How are you tracking the data? Are you tracking the data?
Well, I'll say we don't have a CRM at our company either. And so what we've had to do is jerry-rig the ATS to put in more fields or repurpose unused fields that do things that a CRM should do. So that can actually get you a long way toward what you're trying for if you can't afford or otherwise can't put in a true CRM.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, we've been doing this just pipelining since 2007, and we still don't have the perfect metrics to use. And at first they said, well, it's just the size of your pipeline. But every month we want you to report on interviews, hires, starts, that type of thing too. So we've just used source codes in the ATS to just know who the people we're feeding into the system are. And up until a year ago, we still didn't have a really good solid metric to land on. So it was easy for me for cybersecurity. I just said, well, I'm just going to make one up. So I took the 3 primary job codes you could get hired on that are 100% pure play cybersecurity at the company. And I started tracking those, and I said, okay, how many recs were filled? Out of those recs, how many were filled by internal people or maybe external incoming captures, so people I couldn't really say, you know, we built our bench strength with. And then how many were filled with external experienced professionals, meaning they came from the outside, but they didn't just change badges because we won the contract. And then I looked at how many of those were filled by people who were developed out of my pipeline for the past 7 years. And the results were 34%. I was like, I was hoping for 2. So that was pretty good, because when you think about it, we had 43 other recruiters working on those types of recs. And I didn't fill any of those jobs. I simply got the people in the mix that then those recruiters could fill. So that might be a metric to think about, especially when you have to justify ROI, because it's really tough when you're just doing passive pipeline building. These aren't active candidates.
That's actually tough in a lot of organizations to justify when budgets get tight and you have recruiters on your team who aren't responsible for hires. How do you protect them and protect what you're doing? And if you guys can share, if there's anyone in the audience who has been in that situation, how do you say, this is important, and it's like the assist, right? It's the Dennis Rodman of recruiting. He used to be a great assist guy when he was playing for the Pistons, rebound, whatever you call it, I don't know. Basketball. I know more about football. Baseball, Giants, woo.
I'm just curious, how many of you, especially the sourcers out there, how many of you have gotten your hiring managers to source for you on social networks like LinkedIn? Yeah, fantastic. Isn't it great? It's like the Tom Sawyer thing. Hey, look at how fun it is to paint the fence, right? And then next thing you know, they're developing all the leads, and you're like, oh, I just got to contact them now. So, yeah.
That's great.
But on a related note, I would say at the very least, you should not even agree to holding an intake session unless those hiring managers connect to you directly on LinkedIn, so you can look through all their connections in advance and tell them who you should probably be, or at least so they can, it's on their radar. Instead of asking them who you know, you have a whole list of names and ask them, are any of these people good?
Right. Awesome. Other questions? Okay, we have a woman at the mic, yes. Hi.
Hi, I'm Courtney, I'm from Ocean Spray, and believe it or not, we only have 2 recruiters, and we were able to justify the idea of a sourcer. We had 6 months to prove out that this would work, and so we, and a little bit of back history is we basically showed we spent $600,000 in agency fees. We said, we'll give you $200,000 back, and we'll prove, you know, we can make the difference. So we have our sourcer, he's here, and right now he's just in-mailing like a beast, and it's all right, it's working, maybe a little bit, but didn't know if you had any suggestions, like what are the top 3 things that we could be doing to really develop that strategy, so that at the end of 6 months we can say it's successful and bring him on full time.
Awesome, great question.
So I think first a question to you is, what is the priority pipeline that you'd like this person to work on?
Yeah, so engineering and R&D are our 2 kind of hardest to fill areas, so that's primarily what he's working on, but he's also supporting, and it goes against, I think, what you were saying. Right now we have him supporting some of the open recs, meaning he's sourcing for an open position in addition to building a pipeline, so maybe that's something we need to step away from.
Change it yesterday. No, if it's technical roles, then you need to think about where technical people are most easily found, and there are definitely online communities. It's not necessarily the big social networks. One trick, of course, is if you are going to use a general tool like LinkedIn, but you're doing a very specific search, instead of looking at the first 2 pages of results, go to the last 2 pages of results, because most recruiters are lazy and they don't dig that far. So now you'll be reaching out to people who don't get as many in-mails as the rest of the list.
From a social sourcing perspective, one thing that I tried this year, and I'm in the same kind of space as you with regards to finding engineering R&D talent, I experimented with using Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram to reach out to especially the young audience and promote opportunities at Atlassian. What did a grad life look like at Atlassian? What's our culture like? And it was an epic fail from the point of view that that audience, my target audience, was not using social in the way that I imagined they were. And yesterday night I was talking to Brian about it, and Brian's like, Beck, you're looking at the wrong social channels. You need to think more about looking at their blog posts or their, their open source code base, what portfolios they have online. And it suddenly clicked to me that my view of social sourcing was quite limited in terms of the scope of it. So that might be one thing to consider is, I use a lot of meetup communities. I also speak to a lot of user groups, for example, and now I'll definitely have a look online at portfolios.
My theory on sourcing from social media is not necessarily let's go out and find candidates to interact with. It's more let's leverage some of our advanced search and Boolean skills to find them and then find their contact information and reach out to them in more traditional methods. Not using that social media as a communication vehicle, more using it more as a database of candidates. So just kind of brushing up on your skills around that, and following some of these people will give you some ideas on how to do that.
I think the thing that's amazing is with young students today, so many of them are producing so much more than just resumes and LinkedIn profiles. They're producing portfolios. No matter what the role is, everybody walks out of college now with a portfolio, and it's not just the artists now. So there's so much information of like finding these unique people that have these amazing skills that want to share it, and it's the thing that's worked best for me. I was looking for again, it wasn't like a very complicated position, especially in New York City. I needed a $45,000 a year videographer. I mean, I needed like a kid out of college that knew how to use Final Cut Pro. And we listed the position, and I got way too many resumes. I got like a couple hundred in overnight, and that was too much. But I was doing some outreach, and what I was doing was looking for these portfolios and reaching out to people and just being personal and saying, oh my God, I love what you did with that Campbell's soup like can. And I got a response rate that was astronomical. It wasn't just the typical in-mail. It was, I went further, and that's the thing, working a little bit harder and spending a little bit more time in it is, number one, it was fun. I was watching videos about Campbell's soup cans and all kinds of weird things. But I really got insight into who they were, what they wanted to do, because their portfolios were just demonstrating what they loved. It wasn't just their work, but it was what their passions were. And for me, I need to find people that are going to be excited to do the work that they're doing. I wanted a kid that was going to stay up all night, a young man or a young woman who was going to stay up all night making videos. And I was able to find that, and it was through that portfolio search. So it's not just, like they said, it's not just LinkedIn, it's not just Facebook, it's not just Twitter. It's using these blogs and finding their presence and seeing because content is being produced so rapidly and everybody's doing it. So it's kind of sifting through that kind of stuff.
Pete, I'm really curious about where you might find talent.
So I try and figure out just weird places people might want to post something that's important to them. So I have, how many people out there need to hire for jobs, whether it's a RN or a Intel analyst or something where they need certifications, ACLS, BLS, Security Plus, CISSP, any type of certification out there, CCNA.
This is so cool. Just wait for this. This is great.
So as you know, it's a process. You have to study for it. You have to pay, in many cases, to get the certification. It takes time. You got to pass a test. In some cases, you have to have years of experience to qualify for it. So I started doing this on Flickr and just saying, like, man, I wonder if anyone would post their CISSP certification. And, they all have handles. So even though the guy's like Joe Cyber or, Ninja Hacker, guess what? On their certification is their full name. So I would just, once I found that, I just peer search them through various ways. And then I tell them, I found you by finding your certification on fill in the blank, Pinterest, Flickr, whatever. And they were really excited about it. They're like, wow, okay, that's pretty cool. So just trying to do stuff like that. I'm sure there's a lot of other things you could look on those types of websites for as well.
It's awesome. Anybody else going out and looking for photos of certifications on Flickr or Pinterest or Instagram? That's pretty cool technique. I like that.
I would add to that, I mean, being very specific about how you found someone, that anticipates a question that they all have. So I've seen some really good email templates where they'll actually put the exact Boolean string that they use to find the person, and then say, this is how I found you. And I know this might start to seem like cyber stalking, but in recruiting, we call it research. You know?
Right. It's nothing like being wanted, right? Being hunted. Other questions? Gentlemen back here? Stand up, Mike. We all want to hear.
Besides from LinkedIn, how do you go about trying to find people with SCIs? Because a lot of times they won't put it on the LinkedIn profile, but you can find it in other ways. I was just wondering if you had a unique way or source of finding like a systems engineer with the TSSCI.
It's mainly just come from a lot of like the market intelligence and research where we've determined if you work for a certain company in a certain location, you're going to have that clearance. Like for example, people in and around the Beltway in DC, you're going to have certain clearances. If you work at the Fort, at Fort Meade, you're going to have a certain level of clearance. It's just kind of knowing that. So it's not so much the sourcing, it's more of the research, which goes hand in hand with the sourcing. You really can't do one without the other.
How many people have researchers on their teams to help them with that kind of info? Or have carved out time to do that kind of work?
And this, by the way, goes beyond these technical roles. I mean, if you're trying to find people who have very little online footprint, on LinkedIn, as you know, you can just get away with putting your name, current title, company, location, that's it. And there are a lot of people with sparse profiles like that. But hey, if you follow Pete's advice, I know that if you have this kind of job title, you work for this kind of company, and you live within 5 miles of Fort Meade, I want you. I don't care what else is on or not on your profile. So find those names, because other recruiters are looking for every other little keyword, which won't be there, so they don't see those results, but you know that they're good.
We had an opening on our team about a year ago, and instead of filling it with a pipeline person like myself, we filled it with a researcher, and we're really lucky to have Dean DaCosta on our team who does the research. So if I can't find somebody, I just go to Dean and say, I have a name, and he gives me all their contact info.
It's a luxury to have people like that on your team, and sometimes they're wrapped up in as one of your sourcers as well, but it is incredible the work that they can do to make you smart about sourcing. What's my time? Let me do a time check. How much time do I have? Another, how many minutes? 15 more minutes, awesome. So let's take some more questions.
Question to Rebecca. Just give us a little more detail about what you meant on the guerrilla campaign advertising. What did you do exactly?
Yeah, sure. So for each campaign we have a unique campaign concept. So I'm about to launch an Australian-wide campaign in about 6 weeks, and the concept is going to be a pop-up tour where we're bringing the office to, or a taste of Atlassian office to each city. By guerrilla marketing, I guess, with the campaign, we initially have the concept, and then with that goes a whole lot of assets. So every campaign has a unique landing page where people can register to attend, say, networking events or tech talks in each city. They can also have a look at job openings. We also have physical assets. So in the European tour case, we had a bus which we drove through each city. When we do the Australian campaign, we're planning on a car wrap with a big Atlassian Charlie, our logo, wrapped around it. And then as well as that, a whole heap of swag. Swag is a new term to me when I joined Atlassian, but I'm sure I'm talking to an audience that knows what that is. But we also have a heap of swag, which is like t-shirts that are branded. We have trucker caps, we have, you name it, coasters, cups, etc., everything that goes with it. So the virality comes from a lot of press that we do. We blog about it externally, we blog about it internally, we get everyone to share it across their networks. A failed attempt at a campaign I did when I first started was, as well as doing the grad campaign in New Zealand, I tacked on an experienced hire campaign in New Zealand at the same time, and the campaign just didn't get the same level of interest that the European did one, for example. And I definitely think that's due to the campaign concept. So when I think about a successful recruitment campaign for us, it really comes down to the branding and how we sell the campaign, and we definitely didn't have a catchy enough concept. So I think the virality and the excitement around the campaign really depends on the initial kind of big bang, hey, this is the campaign, this is what we're doing, and from that comes a lot of press and a lot of excitement and a lot of buzz as well.
Do you ever do any paid marketing around your campaigns, any pay-per-clicks or retargeting or anything like that for your landing pages?
No, honestly, a lot of it is done through our press team or through myself. I go out through a lot of meetups or user groups and ask them to help me push the message. We are experimenting with a LinkedIn in-mail campaign for the first time, where we'll do a drop of 2,500 emails across Australia, and I'll be interested to see the success of that, and it is a pilot, and I hope we'll have some success in terms of creating some volume. But we really have small costs when it comes to actually marketing the campaign.
So in the way that you recruit, does this have an advantage in terms of speed? It sounds like it's very labor intensive and time intensive. But it sounds like you're able to generate candidates very quickly once you've launched.
Yeah, that's right. And often the campaign lead time is around 4 to 6 weeks. So we pretty much release the campaign, release the landing page, and then we start receiving the incoming applications. Speed, absolutely, and it requires, the team has to be able to facilitate and process the applications. With the Australia campaign, we're planning on doing all the pre-selection before we go on the road. So we'll actually do the final interviews on site. And I think that will attribute to the success of the campaign, to come home and say to Scott and Mike, my founders, hey, we made 20 hires during this campaign and we've hired 20 people to start in 1 month. So speed, absolutely, and it does definitely contribute to our pipelining efforts longer term as well.
Very cool. Brian, have you used any paid Twitter ads or Facebook targeted ads, anything like that in your work?
Truthfully, very sparing. Years ago, when we were looking for like interns and stuff like that, we had done some paid ads around schools, but it's not something that we've seen great success with, truthfully. Okay. I mean, and I'm talking, we were like using Facebook because we were targeting college students and things like that, but it's not something that I've been able to argue. I mean, this year I'm trying to get work with us ads and things like that, but it's not something that we've done a lot of in truth. It's
cool. I think we've got some more questions.
So in a perfect world, we all have a team dedicated to only pipelining and not working on active recs. But unfortunately, we're not in that situation right now. And obviously, bandwidth is constrained, and we're all trying to fill our current positions as we grow. So I'm hoping to understand kind of any best practices on how you make that transition. And is it a matter of we need to rip off the Band-Aid and just put people only on pipelining, or can we make that transition successful over a period of time?
Well, there's always somebody on your team that calls himself a recruiter, but they're really more of a sourcer. So you need to give them opportunities to show what they can do. And I think if you position it as, let's try this special project for some, again, try to keep it pipeline focused, not rec focused, so that whatever effort they do, even if it doesn't pay off in the next month or two, it will pay off eventually, because those are relevant leads. And once you do see the yield from those candidates, whether it's sooner or later, now you have the ammunition to devote more of that person's time until finally, it should be able to evolve into a full-time sourcing role. At the same time, if they are good and they can actually train other people how to do stuff, you might want to even consider getting someone very junior but very trainable and have good research and curiosity instincts, and that person can be groomed along at the same time, and that may get you to the full-time equivalent a little faster.
This one, and you probably can't have an accurate answer, but what would you say is that length of time you should give a campaign or a sourcer or a pipelining project time to actually succeed? You mentioned 2 or 3 months, and I think this is sometimes where we all go wrong, right? We want these things to pay off immediately, and they don't. How much leeway should we actually plan for?
Well, I can't go into specific stats, but we have a majority of our leads end up being hired 1 year or more after initial contact. So it really can be, it should be considered a long-term play. Wow.
So if you hired a sourcer and they got to work today, a year from today is probably the earliest you might expect it to pay off in any significant way.
I think you can get a couple of quick wins, but most of your yield will come longer term.
That's a significant investment that I'm not sure all organizations know that's what they're making when they bring on board a sourcer.
We have some quick wins which are driven by campaigns and those sorts of things, but one thing I think would be an interesting exercise to do, which I've spoken to the team about, is let's go through old recs from say 2 or 3 years ago. Let's go through recs where perhaps the role was filled but there were silver medalists, for example. Like, what's happening to them now? What's happening to the grads who were applied 2 or 3 years ago? They've got 2 years or 3 years experience now. Where are they at? So I think, we don't have a dedicated sourcer, but I think, the potential of old recs, say 1 year plus, will be an amazing source of talent, hopefully.
Absolutely. Your ATS is one of your most valuable databases that you have paid for already. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Another one?
I have like 1,000 more.
Okay.
Is there a special interest group or just specific to sourcers? I have so many questions about ratios and productivity measurements and things of that nature. How can we all stay in touch?
How do we all stay in touch around sourcing? Well, there are tons of LinkedIn groups, and there is SourceCon, and what else do you guys read and participate in?
Well, there are, in many metro areas, local sourcing groups. So depending on what city you live in, there may well be either a recruiting organization or a sourcing organization, and they'll have, the recruiting one may have a sourcing focus. So,
any Seattle people in the room? Any Sourcing 7 people in the room? We've got a great group of folks in Seattle that actually get together once or twice a quarter to share information.
DC and Atlanta also have excellent ones.
It's great. The front row is capturing my attention, but I'm going to go to this side because I've been ignoring this side, this gentleman here.
Yeah, so as well as like the great successes and all the wins that you guys have talked about, can you talk about maybe one of your most spectacular failures, things that just totally fell apart,
bombed.
And of course, maybe what you gleaned, what you learned.
Sure. Well, I'll be kind of generic about it, but when you pass a pipeline, sometimes you get pulled into things that we're going after that are very futuristic, obviously. So I got pulled out of my normal cyber pipeline to pipeline a bunch of other types of people for a program that we didn't win. And so 4 months of work, we still had resumes, but they weren't people that we were able to hire at all. So that was like 4 months of this much productivity from an ROI standpoint. So that's always looming out there. It could happen, but at least it was only one person. It wasn't 20 recruiters working on that. So yeah, that was a crash and burn.
It usually happens when the demand shifts under you, and so all of that effort you put in for sourcing now can't be used, or even worse, you get a lot of great leads and then no one does the follow-up calls on those candidates, and it's like sitting on a shelf.
How many people have paid for research and it just sat there on someone's desk or in someone's Excel spreadsheet files, never to pay off? Yep, absolutely.
Just talk about the learnings, share some of that, things to do next time, things of that.
I would want Alex Pedregon to be my caller. I think that would really help the result rate.
What else? What have you learned?
On my end, I'm a one-man team, and my time is extremely valuable. So when I get now, it's working with the rest of my team to identify what's actually important, what's going to happen next. I mean, I can't worry about hiring in 4 months. I have to worry about hiring in 2 months. Like, if you're going to get me to, if you tell me we're going to need a computer developer, and I'm going to have to start looking for this type of person to join our team, don't switch on me, because all of the time, you're going to drive me crazy. And I had to explain that, because I was running into walls where they're like, well, you know what, maybe we're going to get this. Maybe we're going to win this client. Maybe we're going to need to hire this role. And I had to look at them and I go, this takes time. You need to understand that this is, you want great people, you want me to find this talent. We have to be realistic about, it's not just your pipe dreams of what may happen. We actually have to have something going in order for me to start doing this. So it's been setting expectations and communicating that it doesn't happen as fast as they want sometimes.
Absolutely.
And And even just touching on that, I would say being able to anticipate business needs better has been a big learning. We originally used to hire based on a quarter, so the business would say, hey, we need 170 people this quarter, go for it. But often the final numbers weren't delivered to us until we were into the quarter. Now we have full financial year visibility. Things change, but it certainly helps us anticipate business needs, and from the start of the financial year, we can start thinking about longer term. If we meet a great candidate, we know that in Q3 there's going to be an awesome position that will be perfect for them.
That's awesome. Thank you. Great question. Got a young lady in the front here.
Hi. So within sourcing, there's always the conversation about understanding one's motivation, getting to know their why, and building that relationship over time. Have any of you at any point considered kind of hardcore career coaching for potential candidates in the future? If you have, what did that look like? And if you have not, why have you decided against it?
So for those in the back, the question's around, have they considered hardcore career coaching as part of their process in sourcing people? That's a great question.
We have from a grassroots level. So for me, it's been particularly around women in technology and having a fantastic pool of women in the future to come into tech roles. So I have started some grassroots initiatives, even at the high school level, around coaching women and helping them understand what is an interview process, some really simple interview skills. The results won't be there for kind of, it's a 3 to 5 year. It's a long time to wait and anticipate that that will be a success. But I do think that, targeting groups who are typically hard to find and helping coach them through the process or prepare them for what's to come will hopefully pay off later in the future.
So I worked for an IT services firm 11 years ago. This was, I think, pretty progressive for back then. They opened up their internal online university set of courses to external candidates. So if they saw somebody that they thought was good but maybe just needed this extra certification or needed these 2 business skill courses, they would give them the links and let them take it for free.
That's great. It's a great idea. Love that. I think we have time for at least one more question. Another one in the front. If you're in the back and you have a question, we'll get to you, but I just want to make sure I'm being democratic here.
So this is more geared for a larger firm. Is there a sweet spot? Is there a ratio, sourcer to recruiter? I know there's so many variables in that, but any guidance or tips on sort of what that might look like if we're building out that team?
Ratio of sourcer to recruiter.
Yeah, I think you can have one sourcer support 3 or 4 recruiters pretty well. If you have Dean DaCosta, you can double that.
Depends on your team, right? Where they are, how advanced they are.
This is kind of piggybacks off the answer we got with your earlier question. How do you gain the credibility of the hiring manager, or your credibility with the hiring manager, when you're saying, probably more in your instance, Brian, you can't flip-flop on me too quickly because we've got limited resources. I work with a tech company. We've been in business for 6 years, and we've grown up to 1,000 people. Our recruiting efforts and resources aren't scaling at the same level the employees are scaling. Shocker. But with that, how do you get the attention of that hiring manager to incorporate them in your sourcing strategies and get the attention to say, I can't totally switch gears, switch on a dime?
So the question is, how do you get the attention and the buy-in and the credibility with your hiring managers, especially for a new or fast or young, fast-growing team?
So one of the things that I'm held to like a time to hire of like, we need to fill a role. We typically are looking at 4 weeks to hire. And if you get me going in a direction and I'm spend 2 weeks coming into it and your team is dying because they need help, it's going to take me another 2 weeks. Like if I waste my time for 2 weeks to get this in, it's going to take me another 4 weeks after I about face and run the other direction to get this. And in a smaller agency like we are, that can feel like an eternity, and that can turn a team. So it's explaining to them that you can't flip-flop. We have to clearly define what it is we're looking for early on, and making sure that we're all aligned. I mean, that's the thing. It's not just me. It's not just them. It's the other people that are part of the equation, and getting them all thinking the same and feeling the same way and buying into this, so that it's not just, you know, the whims of a hiring manager. So it's explaining that they're going to waste their own time and hurt themselves if they make me run and then tell me to do an about face.
Right, Pete, how do you get
more
credibility with these super brainiacs?
Yeah, and on a larger scale, this is, I think, true for anyone who wants to try and get off a program that's going to be pure, like, passive pipeline building. If you reach out to the thought leaders for whatever the skill set is, so I'll use cyber because that's what I do. I reached out to hundreds of people in our cybersecurity ranks, hiring managers, program managers, project managers, people with O's after their title. And I said, hey, this is who I am. This is what I do. I am not here to replace your recruiter. I am not going to source for rec 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But if you tell me what you're going to be going after and what needs you need to have, I will build this pipeline. So, oh, you need forensics people, you need malware, or it could be nurses, or it could be accountants, or whatever the case may be, in a location with certain skill sets. And then we got them to buy into it, and we became a trusted advisor, them saying, okay, wow, hey, this has some value, because then they started to see that it didn't happen right away. It was going to take months to build, and years. But now, with that, we started with one person doing pipeline building, then it went to 2, and now there's 5 of us. So you're not going to probably start with a team of 5. You're probably going to start with like a team of a half or a quarter. And you could do small pipelines. Someone could be a regular sourcer. Maybe they pipeline just one real niche skill in one city. And then when the programs, because in HR, that's who the clients are, right? It's the business unit. So when they start to give you accolades, of course, we forward that on to our higher-ups, and they go, oh, wow, this pipeline thing, yeah, that's pretty cool. So that's how I would tackle it, is you have to get that buy-in. If the managers and the programs aren't on board, it's not going to work.
Well, I think we have run up exactly against our time, and as I suspected, we could sit here all afternoon with you guys. So I really want to thank you for sharing so much with us.